humour me, would you, at the outset? Think for a moment about your favourite film or book. What makes it so? What our favourite stories have in common, of course, is a plot. And for all the twists, my favourite stories always seem to involve the leading characters in some kind of a journey of discovery, a quest in which they have to face and overcome impossible odds. Is that just me? I hope not. Because it turns out that we are, with one another, involved in just such a quest ourselves. But that isn't immediately apparent when you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 15. Always try to be kind to each other and to everyone else. In something like that, which is the NIV, it comes across as something we feel should be fairly easily attainable. Another one of those rather vague, just be nice to each other types of commands. Easy peasy. Well, no. Literally translated, word for word, what we have here is always the good pursue. So, always, this is going to be a full-time occupation, not a side hustle, and not something from which we can be distracted, even when, as in the context, people wrong us again and again. We are to always the good pursue. The good is in the singular. In each and every situation, what we're looking for is the one thing, the God thing, that is His good, pleasing and perfect will. That alone is the good. And pursue tells us quite clearly that we're on a hunt, a search, an active, ongoing investigation. Stand still and the target is lost from sight. Always the good pursue. Pause the video and you might want to read what the writer to the Hebrews has to say to this in Hebrews 10, 23 to 25. And then you might like to discuss or think about the extent to which your experience of church has been about either sit still and be good, or about being on the hunt together, pursuing the good. What does Jesus have to say? Let's read Matthew 9, verses 35 to 38. How would you imagine the mindset of a farm worker, to start off with, in the face of an average or a poor harvest? Of course, the upside is that there isn't going to be much work to do. In that sense, life won't be too demanding. It'll sadly be all too easy to get the harvest in before the crops spoil. But these workers won't be exactly elated about that, because the downside is that there won't be much food for the community. Jesus has them picture exactly the opposite. A few workers, a bumper harvest. They'll be working against the clock, but for a rich reward. In what ways do we see ourselves as working against the clock? How does the urgency show itself? So that's Jesus addressing the issue of urgency. How about the idea of discovery? Let's read Matthew 13, 44 to 46. What do we notice? For a start, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like. So this kind of mindset that he's describing in these two parables is the sort of thinking that accompanies kingdom come. It doesn't just happen. You find what you are looking for and you go for it, because you know that if you don't, you'll always be regretting it. So, how are we searching for and discovering the good, the kingdom come in one another? If we want an answer that comes from the ground up, it takes in another couple of those one another commands. In Romans chapter 15 and verse 7, we are commanded to accept one another, just as Christ accepted us. And then in James 5 and verse 16, we're called to confess our sins and pray for each other. Those are two good ways to start searching for kingdom come right there. And then how about always, as in always the good pursuit? Read Matthew 4 and verses 1 to 10. What is the tempter doing? And especially in verses 8 to 10, how is it meant to work? It's the classic means to an end temptation, isn't it? Where we will be tempted, as Jesus was, to achieve God's goals by means of our shortcuts. And what Jesus does is to refuse the offers of shortcuts. Always the good pursuit. In Matthew 15 and verses 21 to 28, we do see Jesus apparently getting distracted from his quest. I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel, he says. But when the Canaanite woman responds the way she does, Jesus is on the hunt right away. Evidently then, she is one of those lost sheep. And this is why the picture of a hunt, a quest, is a helpful one. The good in each situation is discovered as here, moment by moment. It is not known in advance. In Matthew 16, verses 24 to 28, responding to Peter's rebuke, Jesus deals with perhaps the critical issue that can turn our quest of a lifetime into something a bit more like sometimes the good pursue if you can find it at the right price. No, the good that we're pursuing is the good, whatever it costs, and it will cost everything. When we ourselves have been persuaded to call off the pursuit of the good, what lay behind that decision? Did we fall for a shortcut? Was there a conflict with our tradition? Was there an issue with the costs? If you have been, thanks for joining in, and until next time, always the good pursuit.